It takes a little more than belief to execute goals like Al Spazzeri or young Mark. You've got to have courage, and you're going to need an abundance of courage. Annie Danaka tells us a beautiful story from Portland, Oregon. You're going to have a lot of people against you, some of the people that you thought were your friends and loved ones. And they're going to try and hold you back. And it's going to be sheer guts, courage that'll keep you going. Al did it, Mark did it, Annie Danaka did it, and so can you. Listen to this.
Now, you've got to have courage tacked on the idea. In the vernacular, it takes a lot of guts. We were fortunate enough to have Paul Hutsey share his experience with us yesterday. You know, in that same meeting that I met Paul Hutsey in, I was living in LA at the time, and I had come into Toronto to work the conventions for that company. There was another gentleman, and that man changed right in the meeting. He changed right in the meeting. He went back. He lived in a neighboring town to Paul. I believe he was in Hutchinson, Kansas. At that time, Paul was in Wichita. And I remember Paul telling me one day, he said, you know, he changed so much, he appeared to be phony. He said, I almost told him. But he said he never changed back. Well, I was out working in Paul's company. I was working up and down the west coast of the United States. I was in Portland, Oregon. And there was a young lady in the seminar there, and I'm going to tell you, she had her act put together. You could say she had her head screwed on right. Physically, she was quite an attractive lady. She did some of the work that you do, Scott. She worked on stage. She did commercials. She raced cars. I'm talking about those great big long things with little wheels on one end and big ones on the other to go about 5,000 miles an hour for a second or two. You know? And she won the races. She was a salesperson in Paul's company, and she did very, very well. Her name was Annie Danaka. The following Christmas, Annie sent me a calendar. And on each month was a beautiful philosophical quotation contained beautiful truths about life. Rather than write to her, I gave her a call and thanked her for it. One thing led to another, and we got around to the point of talking about something John was talking to young Mark about. He was saying some of your peers are going to attempt to knock you off course. Well, I would go so far to say, Mark, that many of your peers are going to attempt to knock you off course. As you go to execute this big idea, understand not only do you have to adapt to the new idea, but the people around you are going to have to adapt to your new idea if they're going to accept you in their life. And it's highly unlikely that they are going to adapt. You see, the people you've been associating up to now, they've been earning $18,000 a year, Al. And I would imagine some of those people probably have quit talking to you. Yeah? Marge sitting there, his wife, saying, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they've quit talking to us. I experienced this. When my income took off, some people I thought were my friends quit talking to me. Of course, you're earning this money. What are you going to do with it? Well, I like spending it. My wife gets a bigger kick out of it than I do, but you buy a nice new car. They say, oh, you're a big shot now. And, of course, you probably want to live in a nice new home. What was the matter with the old one? Not good enough for you? You've got to be prepared for this, and you've got to develop mental strength, because I'm going to tell you at first it hurts. It bothers you. They try and pull you back to where they are. Annie was telling me about a time she went down on a call for a play, and she went with a couple of her, what she thought were her girlfriends. She got the leading role in the play, and the friends didn't even get in the supporting cast. I have never been in a play, but my daughter has, and one that Scott was musical director of, and I watched them rehearse. I went over and I got to know the cast. And they work hard. They worked long hours. This is before it ever goes on stage. I mean, they start early in the morning, they go to late at night. They may do this for weeks on end. Then just to find you got to rewrite this section, you got to learn it all over again. New energy has to be put into it. It's tough, grueling work. There's no audience there to give you applause. There's nobody there but the director, the producer, the critique what you're doing and say, that's not good enough, do it again, you know, do it different, do it better. It can be a little disheartening. Opening night is a big night, big night. Now, I know that intellectually. I don't really know it emotionally because I've never been in a play. But I watched them, and they were excited. And, of course, afterwards, there's a party for the cast. Because Colleen happened to be in this one, I was invited to the party, and I was standing watching them, and they were so enthused. They were excited. I mean, big deal. Well, opening night of Anne's play, her girlfriends didn't come out to support her. And that's usually a time, I know that one that I'm referring to with Scott, that Colleen was in. There were members of the cast where their families flew in from the United States. Yours did, as a matter of fact, Scott. I met his mother and his sister. In fact, I had breakfast with them after. They had flown in from Colorado. Another chap had his family flow in from Alberta. They come out to support them on opening night. Well, these girls never even come out to support Anne, and it bothered her. It really bothered her. And she was talking to an old friend of her dad who has since passed away. His name was Hap. Hap wrote her this letter. She told me about it. She says, I'll send you a copy of it. I've given it to a few people. On occasion, she says, you can have permission to use it in the seminar. It is a classic. It is a classic. Now, as I read this, I want you to keep this in mind. As you take that new idea and you make up your mind you're going to go right to the goal, you're not going to be part of the 80%, you're going to be the 20%. And you want to remember this, Mark, don't let those kids pull you down. They're on the wrong track. And you make up your mind you're going to execute this regardless of what anybody says. Hap said, Dear Anne, once upon a time there was a fellow by the name of Al Cap who wrote a comic strip called Lil Abner. Many years ago he had some characters in the strip who lived in a town near Dogpatch. They were the town bums, the ne'er-do-wells, the failures whose whole aim in life was to pass judgment on others. Their criticism and ridicule became so vehement that in time, the rest of the people in town became acutely conscious of it. The boys down at the stable, as they were called, because that's where they spent most of their time, soon set the social standards for the whole town. Nobody could do anything without their sanction. Because they lived within the structure of their crummy little world, they would laugh and point their finger at anyone and everyone who tried to be better than he was. As a result, the people feared the ridicule of the boys down at the stable so much so that they stopped trying. Soon everybody became bums, and the whole town died. He said, in every social structure, Anne, whether it's family, town, country, or state, there are the boys down at the stable. They're the jealous ones. They're too scared to try something different, and they show their ignorance by laughing at those who do. Learn to recognize the men for what they are, and don't let them hurt you. It takes a certain amount of toughness in here to succeed. One has to rise above those who would tear you down so that they can laugh and say, I told you so. There's too many of us who love you and want you to make it, and I could put myself right at the top of the list. You aren't going to fall flat on your face as they would have you. You're going to do a superb job. Remember, this show is only one small step in the direction of greater things you will do, many of which are beyond your wildest dreams. One of the things I like about you best is that you always give it hell for try. The show will be a success because of you and others like you who try. There are only winners in the cast. The losers are gathered down at the stable, laughing and hoping for our failure. If we could dig down deep inside of them, I'm sure we'd find that they would like to win also, but they're too scared to try. And they attempt to cover up their own failures as human beings by laughing at others. In a sense, I'm sorry for they. Their guilt must make them very unhappy people. Much love and give them hell, Hap. What a letter. I wished I had known him. I can relate to this very, very well because I spent half my life as one of the boys down at the stable. Then I was fortunate, like that elderly couple, I had somebody knock on my door and show me how to turn in a bigger bulb, illuminate my life to a greater degree. And I experienced people like this. You see, what I did was I relate back, how did I react to these people? I reacted the same way. And I had to recognize, yeah, I was jealous. I was jealous. I was cynical. And I would point my finger and laugh at anybody who tried to be better. You'd never find me in one of these at that time. Now, this idea and expectation that John was referring to, I have come to the conclusion that as you study the laws of your being, that giving and receiving is one of the laws. It's the action-reaction where John was using a little dynaswing. And I found out as you give, you learn how to receive. And the more you give, the more you receive. And that's just the way it works. And as you get that law firmly planted in your mind, and you really understand the significance behind this power, then it becomes simple and, in fact, natural to expect good things. Because you know how it works. You expect your car to run when you turn the key. And if it doesn't, you know there's a little problem. And if there's a signal comes to you that there's a problem, let's say a red light goes on in the dash, you don't take a screwdriver and knock the red light out of the dash and keep driving. That's a signal telling you there's something wrong. You correct what's wrong. If we see a signal on our results, there's got to be a correction made in here. Let's go inside, get under the hood. As I mentioned a moment ago, we were fortunate enough to have Paul here yesterday. I'm going to ask Paul to come back down here. Now, Paul, maybe we could just stand over here, all right? Now, I asked Paul to come down for a reason. John and I come up with an idea some time ago, and we've been working on this idea for a long time. Last night, having dinner with Paul, Paul talked about changing the number 2 to a candle, because it represented light, and light comes from inside. And I got thinking about this, and I was thinking of a quote that I guess you could say both John and I fell in love with quite a long time ago. And the quote kept playing on our mind and playing on our mind, and so we decided to develop an idea around it. And it is it's actually not a quote, it's an epitaph that Theodore Roosevelt wrote many, many years ago for his son, who had passed away or died in battle 6 months before his own death. And Roosevelt said, "Only those are fit to live who do not fear to die, and none are fit to die who have shrunk from the joy of life. Both life and death are parts of the same great adventure." He said, "All of us who provide service and stand ready for sacrifice are the torchbearers. We run with the torches until we fall, content if we can pass them to the hands of the other runners." Let me review part of it. He says, all of us who provide service. I think Paul provides a lot of service. I don't think he does. I know he does. And if you go throughout Texas, Missouri, Louisiana, Kansas, you're going to say, hundreds of people, they'll say, yeah, Hutsy sure does provide a lot of service. And then he said, and stand ready for sacrifice. Well, you know, he's already told us he's got 60 salespeople down there. He's got 8 managers. He's got 5 kids. He's got 19 grandkids. He's got a wife that's just a beautiful lady. And, yeah. I don't think he has to look for something to do on a weekend. When I asked Paul if he'd come up and share his experience with you and with all the people that are watching this, sitting in their home or at work, he didn't even say, let me think about it. He just said, sure. I'd be glad to, you know. Now, you know, most of us look at sacrifice as losing something. The true meaning of sacrifice is giving up something of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature. I don't know what Paul would have done this weekend, but I do know last night he said, boy, that was just a great day. He said, what a great audience. He said, I had a wonderful time. So he gave up something of a lower nature. He received something of a higher nature. Now, John and I had an idea some time ago And we had someone design and make a little pin out of gold. Now it's a little gold pin. It has a wreath. It has a hand holding a torch. It's a torchbearer's pin. And we had decided we would make a lot of people torchbearers, show them that there is compensation in service and sacrifice. And we only had 2 of these pins made, one for John and one for myself, but we thought the first guy that we should make a torchbearer is Paul Hutsey. You know? Right here.
This is the only one we got left. So,
Isn't that nice? See how fast you get it back when you give it out? And I'm going to tell you, that was spontaneous. We were talking last night, and I said the only time you give is when you don't think about it. It's just automatic. It's got to be spontaneous. You have to think about it. You're trading. I know that John didn't even know I was going to do that. We talked about making Paul the first torchbearer, but he didn't know I was going to do that then, nor did I know he was going to do that. Now, you get locked into this idea. What you want to do is fall in love with what you do. The results you get are the compensation you receive for what you do. Now, there's a difference between expecting something and wanting it. Don't see this as a difficult task. On page 33, what I want to suggest you do is take and write down the left-hand side of page 33, about every 3rd line. Put family life right at the top on the left-hand side. Right on the left-hand side of the page down here, on the first line, put family life. Drop down 2 or 3 lines, put social life. Come down 2 or 3 more lines, staying on the left-hand side, put business life. Come down a little further and put income. Come down a little further and write health. Now, they're just some suggestions of areas of your life. I want to suggest you pick out some more and then ask yourself, have I just been wanting these because wants are here in the consciousness? Expectation is in here. And you can want things, you can see them, and you can have them in your consciousness. If you don't plan them in here, you're not going to get them. And I want you to take some time and really think about that. And don't just pass this lesson over and go on and do whatever you're going to do. This is the lesson. It's important that you get them. This is how you get yourself involved. You develop the understanding. It motivates the action, which changes the results. And that's what we said. It's the understanding and application. On page 34, quote at the top of the page, I believe John did that much better than I could do it here with young Mark over here. So desire is the effort of the unexpressed possibility within, seeking expression without, through your action. It's the idea that's cooking in every cell of our being. It's the act that's bubbling under. There's something inside wanting us to go out and do. It's the idea wanting to be expressed. And don't be disheartened if it doesn't happen when you think it's supposed to happen. John mentioned yesterday there's a season for